The train lurched to a stop at the dusty platform in Coolidge, Arizona Territory, and Hannah Fairweather gripped the wooden crate beside her with white knuckles, silently praying that none of the glass vials inside had shattered during the rough journey from Boston. Through the smudged window, she could see a handful of weathered buildings baking under the relentless August sun of 1885, and her heart hammered against her ribs as she wondered if she had made the worst mistake of her life. The conductor called out the station name, and Hannah stood carefully, smoothing down her traveling dress while eyeing the 3 heavy crates stacked in the aisle beside her seat. A younger woman across from her had been watching her peculiar luggage with curious eyes throughout the journey, but Hannah had deflected questions with polite smiles and vague answers about household goods. How could she explain that these crates contained a microscope, beakers, burners, chemical compounds, and enough scientific equipment to outfit a small laboratory? She had answered the advertisement for a mail-order bride 3 months ago in a moment of desperation and defiance. Her father had just passed away, leaving debts she could never repay on her meager salary as a teacher. His collection of scientific equipment, purchased during better times when he had been a respected professor before his controversial theories ruined his reputation, was all she had left of value. When the marriage broker had informed her that her intended, one Isaac Crawford, owned a cattle ranch and mining interest outside Coolidge, she had dared to hope that, perhaps in the wild frontier, a man might be more accepting of a woman with unconventional interests. The platform was nearly empty when she stepped down, her legs unsteady after days of travel. A porter helped unload her crates, stacking them beside her trunk while she scanned the sparse crowd for a man who might be looking for a bride. The telegram had specified that Isaac would meet her at the station at 3 o'clock, and according to the conductor's pocket watch, she was precisely on time. Minutes ticked by. The other passengers dispersed, and the porter wandered back inside the station building. Hannah stood in the blazing heat, her high collar growing damp with perspiration, and felt the first stirrings of panic. What if he had changed his mind? What if he took one look at her through a window somewhere and decided she would not do? She was not a beauty by conventional standards. Her features were too strong, her figure too angular, and her hands bore the ink stains and calluses of someone who spent more time with books and experiments than needlework. At 23, she was already being whispered about as a spinster back home, though in truth, she had rejected 2 perfectly acceptable suitors because neither could understand why she kept sneaking into her late father's laboratory to continue his work. Miss Fairweather. She turned so quickly that her hat slipped sideways. The man approaching was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of desert sand. He wore dusty work clothes and a hat that had seen better days, and he moved with an easy confidence that made her suddenly aware of how rigid she was standing. "Yes, I am Hannah Fairweather," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He stopped a respectful distance away, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair that curled slightly at the ends. "Isaac Crawford, I apologize for being late. One of my horses threw a shoe on the way into town." Hannah felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. His voice was pleasant, educated despite the frontier setting, and his eyes were kind even if they held obvious uncertainty. She supposed he was wondering if he had made a mistake as well. "I understand. Thank you for coming." The formality of her words sounded ridiculous even to her own ears, but she had no idea what else to say. Isaac's gaze drifted to the stack of crates beside her, and his eyebrows rose slightly. "Those are all yours." "Yes. I know it is rather more than expected. I can pay extra for the wagon space." Her chin lifted defensively. They contain items of great personal value. I have a wagon. Space is not a concern." He moved closer to examine the crates, and Hannah's heart began to pound again. The labels were still partially visible on two of them, indicating fragile scientific instruments. "These look like they came from a university. They belonged to my father. He was a professor." The words came out clipped. She waited for the inevitable questions, the judgment. Instead, Isaac simply nodded and gestured to a wagon hitched to two sturdy horses across the street. "Let me load these up. The ranch is about an hour's ride. We should get started before the worst of the afternoon heat." He was stronger than his lean frame suggested, lifting the heavy crates with care and securing them in the wagon bed with practiced efficiency. Hannah watched his hands as he worked, noting the way he handled the crates marked fragile with extra attention. Those hands were weathered and scarred, capable hands, and she felt an unexpected flutter in her chest when he turned to help her up to the wagon seat. The touch of his hand on hers, even through her glove, sent a jolt through her system. She settled onto the wooden seat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he climbed up beside her and took the reins. "I should tell you about the ranch," Isaac said as they started moving through the small town. "I run about 300 head of cattle with the help of 4 ranch hands. We also have a small mining operation, mostly silver, though the vein is not what it used to be. The house is modest but sturdy. You will have your own room until we are properly married. I thought you might want time to settle in first." Hannah blinked in surprise. The marriage broker had assured her that all legal arrangements could be handled immediately upon arrival. "That is very considerate. I figured we should at least get to know each other a bit before making anything official. The advertisement and letters, they only tell you so much about a person." He glanced at her sideways. "Unless you would prefer to proceed immediately. I do not want you to feel I am backing out of our arrangement. No, I appreciate the opportunity to become acquainted first." The relief in her voice was unmistakable. They fell silent as the wagon rolled out of town onto a dusty road that stretched toward distant mountains. The landscape was unlike anything Hannah had ever seen, all browns and muted greens, harsh and beautiful in equal measure. The sky seemed impossibly vast without Boston's buildings to contain it. "What did your father teach?" Isaac asked after a while. Hannah hesitated. This was usually where the conversation turned uncomfortable. Chemistry and natural philosophy. He was particularly interested in soil composition and mineral analysis. He passed away 4 months ago. I am sorry." The sympathy in Isaac's voice sounded genuine. "My own father died 2 years back. That is when I took over the ranch fully." "Was he a rancher as well?" "Rancher and tinkerer. He was always trying to improve things, coming up with new designs for water pumps or better ways to process ore from the mine. Drove my mother crazy the way he would get obsessed with a problem and forget to come in for supper." Isaac smiled at the memory. "She passed when I was 16, fever. I am sorry, too. That must have been very difficult." "It was. But it also taught me to appreciate the time we have and the people in our lives." He looked at her directly then, and Hannah felt that flutter again. "I am hoping we can build something good here, Miss Fairweather. A partnership, if not immediately a love match." The honesty of his words touched something deep inside her. "I hope so too, and please call me Hannah." "Then you should call me Isaac." He paused. "Can I ask what you plan to do with your father's equipment?" Here it was, the moment of truth. Hannah took a breath. "I had hoped to continue some of his research. He was working on analyzing soil compositions to determine the best crops for different regions, and also on improving mineral extraction processes. It was important work, even if his colleagues did not always appreciate his methods." She waited for the dismissal, the suggestion that such pursuits were inappropriate for a woman, or that she should sell the equipment and forget such foolishness. Instead, Isaac said, "That sounds like it could be useful out here. We have constant struggles with knowing what will grow well and what will not. And the mine, we have been losing almost half the silver in the extraction process because we are using outdated methods." Do you understand his research well enough to apply it? Hannah's heart leaped. Yes, I assisted him for years. I understand the principles and the procedures. Then maybe we can set up a space for you to work. There is an old storage building that could be converted into a laboratory of sorts. It would need some fixing up, but it has good light and ventilation. She stared at him, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. You would allow that. Why would I not? If you have knowledge that could help the ranch and the mine, it would be foolish not to use it. He shrugged. Besides, everyone should have something that belongs to them, something that makes them feel alive. My father taught me that. Hannah felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back quickly. This man, this stranger she had agreed to marry sight unseen, was offering her something no one in Boston had ever considered: respect for her mind and her work. The ranch came into view as they crested a low rise. It was indeed modest, a collection of wooden buildings clustered around a main house, with corrals and pastures stretching out beyond. Mountains rose in the distance, purple and blue in the afternoon haze. It was rough and raw compared to Boston, but there was something honest about it that appealed to Hannah. A dog came running to greet them, barking joyfully, and Isaac laughed as it circled the wagon. That is Scout. He is friendly but excitable. Hannah found herself smiling as the dog bounded alongside them. When Isaac pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house, Scout immediately put his paws up on the side, trying to sniff at the newcomer. "Scout, down," Isaac commanded, and the dog obeyed, though his tail continued wagging furiously. A man emerged from the barn, older and weathered, with a neat gray beard. "So you made it back. This the lady. Hannah, this is Thomas, my foreman. Thomas, this is Miss Hannah Fairweather." Thomas touched his hat brim. "Madam, welcome to the Crawford Ranch." "Thank you," Hannah said, warming to his gruff courtesy. "Thomas, can you help me unload these crates? They need to be handled carefully." Isaac jumped down from the wagon and came around to help Hannah descend. Again, that spark when their hands touched. Over the next hour, Hannah watched as Isaac and Thomas carefully transported her crates into the house, placing them in an empty room at Isaac's direction. The house itself was better than she had expected, clean and well maintained with good furniture and real glass in the windows. Someone had even put fresh flowers in a vase on the kitchen table. "I had Maria, Thomas's wife, come in and freshen things up," Isaac explained when he caught her looking at the flowers. "She helps with the cooking and cleaning a few days a week. I did not think you would want to arrive to a bachelor's mess." That was very thoughtful. Hannah removed her hat and gloves, looking around the main room with its stone fireplace and sturdy furniture. "It is a lovely home. It is yours now, too, or it will be." Isaac seemed suddenly uncertain. "Let me show you to your room. You must be exhausted from the journey." He led her down a short hallway to a room that had clearly been prepared for her arrival. The bed was made with a colorful quilt, the washstand held a pitcher of fresh water, and someone had even hung curtains at the window. Hannah set down her small traveling bag and turned to find Isaac watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "I know this is all very strange," he said, "but I want you to feel safe here. Take all the time you need to settle in. We can have supper in a few hours, and tomorrow I can show you around the property properly." "Thank you, Isaac, truly." She meant it with her whole heart. He nodded and backed toward the door. "I will be in the barn if you need anything. Just ring the bell on the porch." After he left, Hannah sat on the edge of the bed and let out a long breath. Her hands were trembling slightly, reaction setting in after the stress of the journey and the uncertainty of the meeting. But underneath, the nerves was a growing sense of hope. Isaac Crawford was not what she had expected. He was better. She rose and went to the window, looking out over the ranch. She could see Isaac walking toward the barn, Scout trotting at his heels. He moved with purpose and grace, clearly at home in this harsh landscape. What had driven him to seek a mail-order bride? Surely a man like that could have found a wife locally. But then again, what woman in this small frontier town would understand about scientific equipment and research? Perhaps they were both misfits who had found each other through circumstance and luck. Hannah unpacked her traveling bag, hanging her dresses in the small wardrobe and arranging her toiletries on the washstand. She washed the train dust from her face and hands, changed into a fresh dress, and spent a few minutes trying to tame her hair into something presentable. Then, too restless to remain in her room, she ventured back out into the main house. The kitchen was well stocked and organized. She found bread, butter, and cold meat in the larder, along with preserves and vegetables. On impulse, she decided to prepare something for supper. Cooking had never been her strong suit, but she knew the basics, and it seemed like a good way to contribute rather than sitting idle. She was peeling potatoes when she heard boots on the porch. Isaac appeared in the doorway, stopping short when he saw her at the kitchen counter. "You do not have to do that," he said. "You have had a long journey. I wanted to be useful. Besides, I have been sitting for days. It feels good to move around." She gestured at the potatoes. "I am not a spectacular cook, but I can manage a basic meal. Then let me help." Isaac moved to the sink to wash his hands. "I have been cooking for myself for a long time. Between the two of us, we should be able to create something edible." They worked together in companionable silence, falling into an easy rhythm despite being strangers. Isaac showed her where things were kept, and Hannah began to feel more at ease in the unfamiliar kitchen. She found herself watching him from the corner of her eye, noticing little things. The way he hummed tunelessly under his breath while working, the careful precision with which he sliced the vegetables, the strength in his forearms exposed by his rolled-up sleeves. When their hands bumped reaching for the same pot, they both pulled back quickly, and Hannah felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the stove. "Sorry," Isaac said. "No, it was my fault." She busied herself with the potatoes, hyper-aware of his proximity. Over supper, they talked more easily than Hannah would have thought possible. Isaac told her about the ranch, the challenges of the work, the satisfaction of building something with his own hands. Hannah found herself sharing stories about her father's research, the excitement of discovery, the frustration of being excluded from academic circles because of her gender. "That seems incredibly short-sighted," Isaac said, shaking his head. "Intelligence is not limited to one sex. Anyone who thinks otherwise is a fool. You are in the minority with that opinion. Maybe back east. Out here, people tend to be more practical. If you can do the work, that is what matters." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I have to admit, when I sent for a mail-order bride, I did not expect someone like you." Hannah felt a prickle of defensiveness. "What did you expect? Someone looking for security and nothing more. Someone who would be content to keep house and not ask questions." He smiled slightly. "You are clearly neither of those things. If that is what you wanted, I can leave. I have enough money for train fare back east." The words came out more sharply than she intended. "That is not what I meant at all." Isaac leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I mean that I am pleasantly surprised. The truth is, I sent for a bride because I was lonely and this ranch needs someone to share it with. But I was worried that whoever came would be disappointed with frontier life, that she would find it too harsh and isolated. You seem like you appreciate what this place offers rather than mourning what it lacks. Hannah relaxed slightly. I was worried too, worried that I would arrive and you would be angry that I am not some docile, conventional woman who knows her place. I have never understood the appeal of docile and conventional. Isaac's eyes held hers across the table. My mother was one of the strongest people I ever knew. She could shoot as well as any man, helped my father build this ranch from nothing, and never once pretended to be less than she was. That is the kind of partnership I want. Something warm unfurled in Hannah's chest. Then perhaps we are well matched after all. Perhaps we are. That night, lying in her new bed listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the frontier, Hannah felt something she had not experienced in a long time. Hope for the future. Tomorrow, Isaac had promised to show her the building that could become her laboratory. The thought filled her with excitement that made sleep difficult. When dawn broke, painting the desert sky in shades of gold and pink, Hannah was already awake and dressed. She found Isaac in the kitchen, coffee already brewing on the stove. "You are an early riser," he observed, handing her a cup. "I was too excited to sleep much." "Is that foolish?" "Not at all. Come on, I will show you the building before I need to start the day's work." The structure he led her to was about 50 yards from the main house, built of the same weathered wood. Inside, it was dusty and filled with old equipment, but Isaac was right about the light. Windows on 2 sides let in the morning sun, and the space was larger than she had hoped. "It used to be a bunkhouse when we had more hands," Isaac explained. "Then we stored equipment here for a while. But we can clear it out, give it a good cleaning. There is a stove for heat in winter and we can install better ventilation if needed." Hannah walked through the space, her mind already arranging equipment, planning work areas. "It is perfect. More than perfect. We will need to build some tables, shelving. I am decent with carpentry. We can work on it together in the evenings." Isaac watched her explore with an expression that made her pulse quicken. "You really love this, do not you, the science of it all?" "I do. It is like solving puzzles, uncovering the hidden rules that govern how things work. My father used to say that every element, every compound has a story to tell if you know how to listen." She ran her hand over a dusty windowsill. "When I am working, everything makes sense in a way the rest of the world often does not. Then we will make this happen." Isaac's voice held determination. "It might take a few weeks to get everything set up properly, but I give you my word." Hannah turned to face him fully. "Why are you being so kind to me? You barely know me." He was quiet for a moment, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I told you my father was a tinkerer. What I did not mention was that most people thought he was wasting his time, that his ideas were foolish. It hurt him that he could not share his passion with anyone who understood. I watched that loneliness eat at him." Isaac stepped closer. "When you talked about your father's work last night, your whole face lit up. I recognized that spark, that need to create and discover. I would be a poor man indeed if I tried to extinguish that." Hannah felt tears threaten again. She had spent so long defending her interests, justifying her existence, that simple acceptance felt overwhelming. "Thank you," she managed. "That means more than you know." They stood there in the dusty building, sunlight streaming through the windows, and Hannah felt the first real stirring of attraction beyond the physical. This man saw her, truly saw her, and did not find her wanting. Over the following days, they fell into a routine. Isaac worked the ranch during the day while Hannah cleaned and organized the laboratory building. In the evenings, they worked together on the necessary improvements. Isaac proved to be an excellent carpenter, constructing sturdy tables and shelving to Hannah's specifications. They talked while they worked, sharing stories and ideas, slowly building trust and friendship. A week after her arrival, Hannah carefully unpacked her father's equipment, setting up the microscope, arranging beakers and flasks, organizing chemicals and compounds. Isaac watched with fascination, asking questions about how everything worked. His interest was genuine, his intelligence evident in the way he grasped complex concepts quickly. "Could you show me?" he asked one evening as she was setting up a burner system. "How it all works, I mean. I would like to understand." So Hannah began teaching him basic chemistry principles, delighted by his quick mind and endless curiosity. She demonstrated simple experiments, explaining oxidation and reduction, showing him how different elements combined and reacted. Isaac absorbed it all eagerly, often making connections she had not thought to mention. "This is remarkable," he said, peering through the microscope at a sample of soil she had prepared. "I had no idea there was so much complexity in something we walk on every day." "Everything is complex when you look closely enough," Hannah said, standing beside him. "That is what makes it so fascinating." Isaac straightened and turned to her, and suddenly she was very aware of how close they were standing. His eyes, she noticed, had flecks of gold in them that caught the lamplight. "You are an excellent teacher," he said softly. "You are an excellent student." Her voice came out breathier than intended. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Scout barked outside, breaking the spell, and they both stepped back. "I should check on that," Isaac said, but he did not move immediately. "Hannah, I want you to know that I am glad you are here, very glad." "I am glad too." She meant it completely. After he left, Hannah pressed her hands to her warm cheeks and allowed herself a small smile. This arrangement that had begun as mutual desperation was becoming something real, something precious. She found herself thinking about Isaac constantly, noticing little things. The way his hair curled when it needed cutting, his habit of rubbing the back of his neck when thinking hard about a problem, the gentleness with which he handled everything from horses to glassware. 2 weeks after her arrival, Isaac asked if she would like to see the mine. They rode out early in the morning, Hannah on a gentle mare Isaac had selected for her. The ride took about an hour, and Hannah found herself enjoying the landscape she had initially thought harsh. There was beauty in the stark lines and muted colors, a grandeur in the vast open spaces. The mine was a modest operation, just a few men working a shaft dug into the hillside. Isaac introduced her to the workers and then showed her the current extraction process. Hannah observed carefully, asking questions and taking notes. "We are losing a lot of silver in the waste," she said, examining samples. "I think I can develop a better process, but I will need to run some tests back at the laboratory." "Whatever you need," Isaac said immediately. They were standing near the mine entrance, and Isaac's foreman, an older Mexican man named Miguel, approached them. "Boss, we have a problem with the new timber supports. They are not holding as well as they should." Isaac frowned. "Show me." Hannah followed as they went into the mine shaft. The air was cool and damp, the darkness pressing in around the circles of lamplight. About 50 feet in, Miguel pointed to a section where the wooden supports looked stressed. Isaac examined them closely, his expression concerned. "The wood is splitting already." "This should not happen with fresh timber." "Maybe it is the type of wood," Hannah suggested, "or perhaps there is too much moisture in this section causing premature decay." Both men looked at her in surprise. "What?" she said defensively. "My father studied material properties. Wood composition and its reaction to different environmental conditions was part of his research." "Could you analyze the wood and the conditions here?" Isaac asked. Figure out what is going wrong and what would work better. I can try. I would need samples of the wood and the soil, measurements of moisture and temperature. Miguel, can you help Miss Fairweather collect what she needs? Isaac was already mentally working through the problem. Over the next week, Hannah threw herself into analyzing the mind support problem. She set up experiments testing different wood samples under various conditions, documented moisture levels and mineral content in the soil. Isaac would come to the laboratory each evening after his work was done, and they would discuss her findings. The wood you are using is too porous, Hannah explained one night, showing him samples under the microscope. See how the mineral-rich moisture from the soil is being absorbed. It is breaking down the cellular structure much faster than normal decay. What would work better? A denser wood, something less prone to absorbing moisture, or you could treat the wood you have with a sealant, though that would add expense. She consulted her notes. I found a formula in my father's papers for a treatment solution that should work. It is made from materials that should be readily available here. Isaac studied the formula, then looked at her with undisguised admiration. You are brilliant. Do you know that? Hannah felt heat flood her face. I am just applying established principles. No, you are solving real problems that affect people's lives and livelihoods. That is more than just academic theory. He reached out and took her hand, the touch sending electricity up her arm. Hannah, these past 2 weeks, I have felt more alive than I have in years. Working with you, learning from you, it has reminded me that there is more to life than just surviving day to day. Her heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. I feel the same. I never thought I would find someone who understood this part of me, who valued it rather than seeing it as a flaw. Isaac stepped closer, his free hand coming up to gently cup her cheek. It is not a flaw. It is one of the many things that make you extraordinary. When he kissed her, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. His lips were warm and gentle, questioning rather than demanding. Hannah's eyes fluttered closed as she leaned into the kiss, her hand coming up to rest on his chest where she could feel his heart beating as rapidly as her own. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing quickly, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. I was planning to wait longer before doing that, give you more time to be sure. I am sure, Hannah whispered. Are you? I have been sure since the day you arrived and looked at me like I was crazy for offering you a laboratory instead of a wedding ring. He laughed softly. Hannah, I know we barely know each other in some ways, but in others, I feel like I understand you better than people I have known for years. Would you consider making this official, actually marrying me, not just as an arrangement but as a real marriage? Joy bubbled up inside her. Yes. Absolutely yes. They were married 3 days later in Coolidge with Thomas and Maria serving as witnesses. The ceremony was simple, conducted by a circuit judge who happened to be passing through. But Hannah had never felt anything more profound than the moment she became Hannah Crawford. Isaac slipped a simple gold band on her finger, and the kiss they shared held promise of everything to come. The wedding night was tender and sweet, both of them nervous but eager. Isaac was patient and gentle, and Hannah marveled at the intimacy of it, the way physical union seemed to deepen the emotional connection they had already formed. They lay together afterward, Hannah's head on Isaac's chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. Happy? He asked softly. Happier than I knew I could be, she answered honestly. I came here expecting duty and perhaps companionship if I was lucky. I never imagined finding partnership and passion both. We are quite a pair, are not we? The cowboy who loves chemistry and the scientist who took a chance on the frontier. Isaac pressed a kiss to the top of her head. I am the luckiest man alive. Life settled into a new rhythm after the wedding. Hannah continued her research, developing the wood treatment solution that solved the mine support problem, and then moving on to analyzing soil samples from different parts of the ranch. She discovered that certain fields had mineral imbalances that could be corrected, potentially allowing for better crop production. Isaac implemented her suggestions, and within months, they began seeing improvements. Word spread about Hannah's work. Other ranchers and miners began coming to her with problems, and she found herself taking on consulting work. The extra income allowed them to expand the laboratory and purchase additional equipment. Isaac was her constant supporter, helping with the physical labor of her experiments and offering insights that proved surprisingly valuable. "You have a good scientific mind," Hannah told him one evening as they were testing her latest formula for improving ore processing. "Have you ever thought about formal study?" Isaac shrugged. "I never had the opportunity. The ranch always needed tending. I could teach you properly. We have all the equipment here now, and I have my father's textbooks." The idea excited her. You could learn so much. So began their evening lessons. After supper, they would retreat to the laboratory where Hannah taught Isaac chemistry, physics, and mathematics. He absorbed knowledge voraciously, often surprising her with his ability to apply abstract concepts to practical problems. "What if we use this principle to improve water distribution across the ranch?" he would say. "Or could this formula help us develop better feed for the cattle?" They became true partners in every sense, combining his practical knowledge of ranching and mining with her scientific expertise. The ranch prospered as they implemented improvement after improvement. The mine became more profitable with Hannah's new extraction methods. They added cattle to the herd, improved the water systems, and began growing crops in fields that had been considered useless. Their first anniversary arrived on a warm August evening. Isaac surprised Hannah by taking her back to the laboratory where they had shared their first kiss. He had decorated it with lanterns and wildflowers, and laid out a picnic supper on one of the work tables. "Do you remember this day last year?" he asked as they ate. "You stepped off that train looking terrified and defiant all at once, clutching those crates like they held the secrets of the universe." "They held my father's dreams and my only hope for a future where I could be myself," Hannah said. "I was terrified that you would be cruel or dismissive, that I would have trapped myself in a life even worse than the one I was fleeing. And instead I found you." She reached across the table to take his hand. "My partner, my friend, my love. You gave me everything I needed and so much more than I ever dared to want." Isaac stood and pulled her to her feet, drawing her into his arms. "You did the same for me. Before you came, I was just going through the motions, running the ranch because it was what I knew. You reminded me that life could be about more than just survival. You brought wonder and discovery and joy." They danced slowly in the lantern light, no music except the desert wind and the beating of their hearts. Hannah rested her head on Isaac's shoulder and thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. A year ago, she had been alone and desperate in Boston. Now she was loved and valued in the Arizona territory, doing work that mattered with a man who cherished every part of her. As autumn arrived, Hannah realized she was pregnant. The morning sickness gave it away, along with a fatigue she could not shake. When she told Isaac, he lifted her off her feet and spun her around, whooping with joy. "We are going to be parents," he set her down carefully, immediately concerned. "Are you feeling well? Should you be resting? What do you need?" Hannah laughed at his sudden nervousness. "I am fine. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I do not need to be wrapped in cotton wool." But Isaac fretted anyway, insisting she not lift anything heavy and trying to prevent her from working in the laboratory. They argued about it good-naturedly, until Hannah convinced him that staying active was healthy and that she would not take foolish risks. The pregnancy gave Hannah a new research focus. She began studying nutrition and prenatal health, experimenting with vitamin supplementation, and reading everything she could find on maternal wellness. Isaac built her a more comfortable chair for the laboratory and made sure she had nutritious meals at regular intervals. "You are hovering," Hannah told him one evening as he checked on her for the third time in an hour. "I am attentive," Isaac corrected, but he grinned sheepishly. "I just want everything to be perfect." It already is. Their son was born in May of 1887, arriving during a spring thunderstorm that rattled the windows and drummed on the roof. Maria attended the birth along with a midwife from Coolidge, while Isaac paced outside until Maria finally took pity on him and let him in to hold Hannah's hand. The baby was healthy and loud, with a shock of dark hair in his father's eyes. They named him Henry, after Hannah's father, and Isaac cried when Hannah told him. "He would have loved you," she said, watching Isaac cradle their tiny son with infinite care. "My father always hoped I would find someone who valued knowledge and curiosity. He would have been so happy to know I found that and so much more." Being parents changed them both. Isaac became even more protective, constantly checking on Hannah and the baby, while Hannah discovered reserves of strength and patience she had not known she possessed. They took turns walking the floor with Henry when he cried at night, supported each other through the exhausting early months, and marveled together at every tiny milestone. Hannah continued her work, bringing Henry with her to the laboratory in a basket when he was small. Isaac would often find them there, Hannah working one-handed while nursing the baby or showing him colorful chemical reactions like they were toys. "You are going to raise a scientist," Isaac observed, watching Hannah hold up a beaker of blue solution for Henry to examine. "I am going to raise a curious, thoughtful person who knows he can be anything he wants to be," Hannah corrected. "If that happens to be a scientist, wonderful. If not, that is wonderful too." As Henry grew from baby to toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. Hannah's consulting work expanded, and she gained a reputation throughout the territory as someone who could solve complex problems. Mining companies sent her samples to analyze. Ranchers consulted her about soil and water issues, and she even began corresponding with universities back east, sharing her findings and methodologies. "You are famous," Isaac teased her one evening, reading a letter from a professor at Columbia who wanted to discuss her latest paper on mineral extraction. "I am useful," Hannah corrected. "There is a difference." But she could not deny the satisfaction she felt when her work was recognized and valued. The girl who had been excluded from laboratories because of her gender was now consulted by the very institutions that had rejected her. It was vindication of the sweetest kind. When Henry was 2, Hannah discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to expect. Their daughter arrived in the autumn of 1889, a tiny perfect thing with her mother's dark hair and determined chin. "What should we name her?" Isaac asked, holding his daughter while Hannah rested. "What about Isabella after your mother?" Hannah suggested. Isaac's eyes filled with tears. "She would have loved you so much. You are exactly the kind of strong, brilliant woman she hoped I would find. I wish I could have known her." "She is here," Isaac said, looking down at tiny Isabella. "In our daughter, in the life we have built, she is here." Life with 2 children was chaotic and exhausting and utterly fulfilling. Henry was a whirlwind of energy and questions, constantly exploring and experimenting in ways that terrified and delighted his parents in equal measure. Isabella was more thoughtful, watching everything with serious eyes, and even as a baby seemed to study the world with scientific interest. The ranch expanded further. They bought additional land, increased the herd, and Isaac developed new water management systems based on principles Hannah had taught him. The mine remained profitable, and they even opened a second shaft following promising veins Hannah had identified through careful geological analysis. "We should hire more help," Isaac said one evening as they reviewed the ranch accounts. "We are doing well enough to expand the house, maybe add on some rooms." They built an addition that included a proper nursery, an expanded kitchen, and a study where Hannah could work on her papers and correspondence. Isaac surprised her by also building a schoolroom, insisting that their children deserved the best education possible. "We are fortunate enough to have a brilliant scientist for a mother," he said. "They should benefit from that." Hannah hired a governess to help with the children's basic education, but she also taught them herself, sharing her love of discovery and experimentation. By the time Henry was 5, he could identify common chemical compounds and understood basic scientific principles. Isabella at 3 was already showing remarkable observational skills. The years passed in a blur of work and family, challenges and triumphs. Hannah published papers that were read across the country, while Isaac became known as one of the most innovative ranchers in the territory. Together they were a formidable team, respected and valued in their community. When Henry turned 8, he asked if he could have his own section of the laboratory to conduct experiments. Hannah and Isaac exchanged glances, remembering a similar passion in themselves. "You can," Hannah said. "But you have to follow strict safety rules and ask before using any chemicals or equipment." Henry's face lit up with joy, and Hannah felt her heart swell. This was what she and Isaac had built together. A life where curiosity was encouraged, where intelligence was valued regardless of gender, where children could dream of becoming anything they wanted. Isabella, at 6, preferred the ranch to the laboratory. She loved the animals and the land, following Isaac around and asking endless questions about cattle breeding and range management. Isaac taught her to ride and rope, skills Hannah had never quite mastered despite her time in the territory. "We have well-rounded children," Isaac observed, watching Isabella practice her roping while Henry conducted some experiment in the laboratory. "We have loved children," Hannah corrected. "That is what matters most." In 1895, Arizona was still a territory but growing rapidly. Coolidge had expanded, gaining new businesses and even a small school. Hannah was approached about teaching chemistry there, but she declined, preferring to focus on her research and her family. "You could do it," Isaac said when she told him. "I would support you. I know you would. But I am happy with things as they are. I have my work, our children, you. Why would I want to change that?" They were sitting on the porch in the evening, watching the sunset paint the desert sky in brilliant colors. Henry and Isabella were playing in the yard, Scout supervising them with patient dignity. Isaac took Hannah's hand, and she laced her fingers through his, marveling as she always did at how right this felt. "You ever regret it?" Isaac asked. "Answering that advertisement, coming here instead of staying in Boston." Hannah thought about the woman she had been, desperate and determined, clutching her father's equipment like a lifeline. She thought about the life she might have had back east, teaching basic arithmetic to bored children, her scientific equipment gathering dust in some rented room. "Not for 1 second," she said firmly. "This is exactly where I am meant to be." Isaac raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I knew from the moment I saw you trying to protect those crates that you were special. I just had no idea how special or how lucky I would be." "We are both lucky," Hannah said. We found each other at exactly the right time, when we both needed someone who could see us as we really are. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to emerge, Hannah reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her here. She had come to the territory seeking escape and the freedom to pursue her passion. Instead, she had found love, partnership, family, and a life richer than any she could have imagined. The mail-order bride who had brought scientific equipment had indeed found chemistry, but not just in her laboratory. The real discovery had been the chemistry between herself and a cowboy who saw past convention to the brilliant, passionate woman beneath. Together they had built something remarkable, a marriage of minds and hearts that proved love could be both a science and an art. When Henry was 12 and Isabella 10, the family took a trip to San Francisco, their first real vacation. They stayed in a hotel with running water and electric lights, toured museums and universities, and Hannah gave several lectures on her research. The children were wide-eyed at the big city, but by the end of the week they were all ready to go home. "I miss the quiet," Isabella said on the train back, "and the space." "I miss my laboratory," Henry added. "The one in San Francisco was nice, but it was not mine." Hannah and Isaac smiled at each other over their children's heads. They had raised frontier children, hardy and independent, but also educated and curious. It was exactly what they had hoped for. Back at the ranch, life continued its comfortable rhythm. Hannah's work evolved as she grew older, focusing more on training the next generation and less on active consulting. She took on apprentices, young people who wanted to learn scientific methods and found satisfaction in passing on her knowledge. Isaac, too, began thinking about the future. They worked together to develop a comprehensive plan for the ranch and mine, ensuring everything would be ready to pass on to their children when the time came. "Henry could manage the mine if his interest in minerals continues," Isaac said. "And Isabella has a real gift for ranching. They could work together just as we have." "They will make their own choices," Hannah reminded him. "We can guide them, but their lives are their own to live." "I know. I just hope they find partnerships as strong as ours, whatever path they choose." On their 15th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Hannah with a gift. He led her blindfolded to the laboratory, and when he removed the blindfold, she gasped. There, gleaming in the sunlight, was the latest model microscope, far more advanced than anything she currently owned. Beside it were new glassware, modern chemical supplies, and books she had mentioned wanting to read. "Isaac, this must have cost a fortune," she breathed. "You are worth every penny." He wrapped his arms around her from behind. 15 years ago, you stepped off that train with scientific equipment and changed my life completely. I wanted to show you that I still value that part of you, that I always will." Hannah turned in his arms and kissed him deeply. The passion between them had not faded with time. If anything, it had deepened as their emotional intimacy grew. They understood each other completely, anticipated each other's needs, and still found ways to surprise and delight each other. "I love you," she said when they finally broke apart. "More than I thought possible. I love you too, my brilliant, beautiful wife." Isaac kissed her forehead. "Thank you for taking a chance on a cowboy who placed an advertisement. Thank you for being the kind of man worth taking a chance on." As the 19th century drew to a close, the Crawford family thrived. Henry, now 16, was preparing to attend the University of Arizona to study geology and mining engineering. Isabella, 14, ran a significant portion of the ranch operations with confidence and skill that impressed everyone who worked with her. Hannah's hair had threads of silver now, and Isaac's face bore the lines of a life lived outdoors, but they were healthy and happy. They still worked together, still challenged each other, still laughed and loved with the same intensity they had from the beginning. One evening, they sat on the porch as they had countless times before, watching the sunset while Henry and Isabella argued good-naturedly about something in the barn. "We did well," Isaac said quietly. "We did," Hannah agreed, "though I think we still have quite a bit of life left to live." "Oh, I am counting on it." Isaac pulled her closer. "I want decades more of this, of you." "Then you shall have them," Hannah promised, and she kept that promise. They grew old together on the ranch they had built, surrounded by children and eventually grandchildren. Hannah continued her research well into her 70s, making contributions that were recognized across the country. Isaac remained active in ranching and mining, always implementing new ideas and improvements. Henry became a renowned geologist, making discoveries that advanced the field significantly. He married a teacher named Sarah, and they had 3 children who visited the ranch often. Isabella took over the ranch operations when Isaac was ready to step back, running it with intelligence and innovation that made her parents proud. She married a veterinarian named James, and together they modernized cattle management practices across the territory. When Arizona finally achieved statehood in 1912, Isaac and Hannah were there for the celebration in Coolidge. They were older now, slower, but still sharp-minded and devoted to each other. "Can you believe we have been together 27 years?" Hannah asked as they watched the statehood festivities. "Best 27 years of my life," Isaac said firmly, "and I look forward to however many more we get." They got another decade together. Isaac passed away in 1922 at the age of 67, peacefully in his sleep with Hannah holding his hand. His last words were, "I love you," and Hannah carried them in her heart through the grief that followed. She lived another 5 years, continuing to work in her laboratory when her health permitted, spending time with her children and grandchildren, and always talking about Isaac. How he had seen her potential when others saw only impropriety. How he had supported her dreams and built his own dreams around them. How they had created something beautiful together. Hannah Crawford passed away in 1927, surrounded by family, her mind still sharp and her spirit still curious about the world. Her final words were scientific observations about the sunset visible through her window, and then, softly, "Isaac is waiting." They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, their headstones simple but inscribed with words their children had chosen. Isaac Crawford, beloved husband, father, and partner. He saw possibilities where others saw only convention. Hannah Crawford, beloved wife, mother, and scientist. She brought wonder and discovery wherever she went. Their children ensured that both the ranch and Hannah's scientific legacy continued. The laboratory became a teaching facility, training new generations in chemistry and analysis. The ranch prospered under Isabella's management and later her children's. Henry's geological surveys opened up new mining opportunities across the state, but perhaps their greatest legacy was the love story they had lived. A mail-order bride and a cowboy, brought together by circumstance, who had discovered that true partnership could transform 2 lives into something extraordinary. They had proven that chemistry existed not just in laboratories, but in the spark between 2 souls who recognized each other as equals. The scientific equipment that Hannah had brought to Arizona in 1885, clutching those crates with desperate hope, became the foundation of a renowned research facility. The ranch that Isaac had built with his own hands became a model of sustainable, innovative agriculture. But more than any of that, the love they shared and the family they built together became a testament to the power of acceptance, respect, and genuine partnership. In the end, the mail-order bride did indeed bring scientific equipment, and the cowboy did indeed discover chemistry between them. But what they created together, a love that spanned decades and transformed lives, was more remarkable than any experiment and more enduring than any discovery. They had found in each other exactly what they needed, and in doing so, had built a legacy that would last for generations. Their great-grandchildren still told the story of how it all began. A desperate woman clutching crates on a train platform, a lonely rancher taking a chance on a mail-order bride, and the moment they looked at each other and recognized a kindred spirit. It was a story of courage and chemistry, science and soul, and above all, love that defied convention and expectation to become something truly extraordinary. The Crawford family continued to thrive in Arizona, carrying forward the values Isaac and Hannah had instilled: curiosity, innovation, partnership, and the belief that everyone deserves to pursue their passions regardless of what society might dictate. The ranch remained in the family for generations, each new caretaker adding their own improvements while honoring the foundation Isaac and Hannah had laid. The laboratory, too, continued to serve the community. It expanded over the years, eventually becoming affiliated with the university and training countless students in scientific methods. A scholarship was established in Hannah's name for women pursuing studies in chemistry and geology, ensuring that future generations would have opportunities she had fought so hard to claim for herself. The Wild West that Hannah and Isaac had known slowly transformed into modern Arizona, but the spirit of innovation and determination they had embodied lived on. Their story was told and retold, an inspiration to anyone who had ever felt limited by circumstance or convention, a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the courage to take a chance on the unknown. And on that hill where they rested together, overlooking the land they had loved and the legacy they had built, their spirits remained intertwined as they had been in life. The mail-order bride who had brought scientific equipment and the cowboy who had discovered chemistry between them had found their happily ever after, not in fairy tale perfection, but in the real, hard, beautiful work of building a life and a love that would endure long after they were gone. Their story was complete, their love fulfilled, their legacy assured. It was an ending that was also a beginning, as all the best love stories are. And somewhere in the Arizona desert, in the wind that rustled through the ranch buildings, and the sunlight that streamed through laboratory windows, Hannah and Isaac's love continued to shine, a beacon for all who seek partnership, understanding, and true connection in this vast and wonderful world.